Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Classic Football Review podcast here on Wearing Number 10. My name's Sean Breslin. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry there hasn't been one of these for a while now, but life happens to us all. We're doing something a little bit different on this episode. Normally, we do an individual match. That's what we've done for the past three episodes. But this is a special anniversary episode. We're looking at Ireland's UEFA Euro 2012 campaign in its entirety, 10 years on from when it happened, and possibly the biggest disappointment in the history of Irish football. But I'm joined by Niall Walsh today. Niall and I are going to just be talking through the entire campaign and our own personal memories of it. And Niall, if you could sum up in a few words, we'll go into depth later, but in
Yeah.
a few words, your memories of Ireland's Euro 2012 campaign.
Yeah, it'd be vague enough considering I was like 10, I think, during in 2012. So, but all I kind of remember was it was like I think the perfect word to describe it was disappointment. Like there was no really fond memories apart from I think the one thing I remember is the biggest memory is getting battered by Spain and then still the Irish fans belting out the fields of Athenry after losing 5-0. I think that's kind of the biggest thing and probably the weirdest thing. You don't really get that after losing 5-0 in a game of football.
It was very disappointing, to be sure, and we'll be coming back to that word a lot. And I think one of the reasons why was going back to qualifying. It felt like this was really the start of something, because it was the second qualification campaign under Trapattoni. The first one had ended in Ireland, for all intents and purposes, getting screwed out of a World Cup spot by Henry's handball. I mean, the game was going to penalties at that point, and who knows whether or not we actually would have won that game. But the narrative is, oh, Henry cheated us out of the World Cup, and we've taken it and run with it. And so the idea, I think, became that if we could do that well against France, then we should absolutely be qualifying for the Euros, which has 16 spots as opposed to the 13 that UEFA has for the World Cup. And so qualifying was kind of like a dream, really. I mean, we had some amazing performances. Richard Dunne against Russia kind of stands out, where he came out with the number 5 drawn on the back of his jersey. I think he ended up sliding on the track or something, because they were in the Luzhniki, weren't they? With the stadium with the big running track around it.
Yeah, I remember. I actually can't even remember what happened to him. I thought, did his jersey rip or he got blood on it or something?
Something happened. Just
Yeah, I
typical
remember. I
typical Irish
do.
centre back stuff.
I do really like that's one thing I remember so vividly is the getting the number 5 drawn on. There's not a lot of things I can vividly remember from that time, but that's one thing I definitely remember.
And then we got the dream playoff draw against Bosnia. We won the first leg 4-0. Trapp said the cat wasn't in the bag yet, but the second leg was a formality, just 1-1 draw, winning at 5-1. And I remember Darren Maloney at the time saying, "Poland and the Ukraine, are you ready for us?" The answer would turn out to be an emphatic yes, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit again. So the hype for this was unbelievable. Neither of
Yeah,
us, I think, remember the 2002 World Cup, because I think we were both alive for it, but I was 3, so I've no recollection of it
yeah.
whatsoever.
I wasn't even one yet. I don't think.
Yeah,
So
some
that
people
just
watching this
shows.
are going to feel very old, but yeah, the hype was just off the charts. Even when it came out that we'd have to play Croatia, Spain, and Italy. Maybe the hardest draw we could have gotten, although I think another group had Portugal, Germany, and Holland in it. So believe it or not, it could have been worse. What do you remember about kind of the lead up to the tournament?
Again, yeah, I think that another word you mentioned there was hype. I think there was a lot of, I remember there was a lot of songs made. There was a lot, like, that's one thing I remember so much was the kind of songs made right before the tournament and the sort of, like, everyone was kind of raring to go. Everyone, I had the jerseys bought, I had whatever, and I think that's kind of what I remember. There was a lot of excitement because that would have been, I think, the first tournament Ireland were in, to my memory. You know what I mean? So that was kind of the first experience I had with an Irish tournament. Obviously, the way it ended wasn't great, but I think going into it was a lot of hype. That might have been the reason why things went the way they did, was because
Yeah,
maybe we
I
got
was
too ahead
thinking
of
back on
ourselves.
this. I was thinking back on this because I think I wonder, did we fall into the trap of what England always do? Like they pump themselves up as
Yeah,
world beaters when they've been average for the most part, except for the last couple of tournaments. But I think it was because we were on a 14 game unbeaten streak coming into the tournament. We kept 11 clean sheets in that time, and it felt like a natural progression of where we were. We didn't get to the World Cup, although we came within a whisker of it, and in the eyes of a lot of Irish, we probably should have done.
yeah,
And then Euro 2012, we kind of rolled through that group, except to be honest, when you look back on the group, it had Macedonia, Armenia, Andorra, Slovakia, and Russia. And Russia and Slovakia are decent, but the rest of them were fairly easy in hindsight. But the fact that we actually beat them and got through the group
yeah.
and smashed Estonia in the playoffs, you thought it's on. And yeah, I remember the songs. There were 3 songs I remember. I remember Damo and Ivor did one. They were big back in those days. Jedward did one. It was like a remix of one of the Eurovision songs they had.
I remember the Jedward one.
Yeah, and then the official one was a rip off the Rocky Road to Dublin called the Rocky Road to Poland. But I'd actually never heard the Rocky Road to Dublin before I heard that song. So it was the maddest thing I've heard. I thought it was brilliant. Of course, you wouldn't have an Irish tournament without thousands upon thousands of fans making the trip. I mean, if you think about the way we packed out stadiums in America at the World Cup in '94 and in Japan and South Korea in 2002, it kind of makes sense that Poland, where we were based, the tournament was Poland and Ukraine, but I think all the Ireland matches were in Poland. It makes sense that we were able to get a massive following out there, and Irish fans have this great reputation of being like the ultimate party, and not just at home but abroad as well. I mean, I think a lot of other footballing cultures look on us quite favorably. So I think we were always going to be the most popular team going into the tournament. But that said, I think when you look at that, it's hard not to think that Ireland have the best fans in the world.
Yeah, no, we definitely. Obviously, it's a bit of bias, but I mean, look, you see certain things with other fans from different countries that we won't get into, but there's times when tournaments can end up kind of with fights, with whatever, with kind of tension between fans. But with Ireland, no matter win or lose, we'll always, give respect to the fans of the other team. We'll dance with them. I mean, Euro 2016 was probably the biggest example of that a few years later. But I think Euro 2012 is where that kind of started off, especially because that was in a time of where social media was getting bigger. So there was loads of these videos online of the Irish fans singing and dancing with people from other countries. Like that's kind of how we do it. We're like, again, as you said, party. So I think a lot of people would say the Irish fans are probably one of the best because they're quite well behaved and they'll have a party, but in a good, like, they'll be loud, but in a good way.
I'm glad you mentioned social media because what the vivid memory I have of the RTE coverage of this was the social media polls, because this was at the time where everyone was still using Facebook and Twitter was picking up a lot of steam as well, and they liked their social media polls in the RTE studio, and the poll was, will Ireland win? And it was 87% yes for the first game against Croatia, and Bill O'Hurley, God rest him, he couldn't hold in his laughter, which in hindsight makes sense. But coming into that first game against Croatia, it did feel like a must win because obviously you got Italy and Spain coming up next, the 2 most recent World Cup winners. Spain, undisputedly the best team in the world at the time. And we thought, okay, well, if if we can get something against Croatia, maybe that'll give us a bit of momentum that'll take us through the rest of the group stage, and then who knows? In their heart of hearts, I don't know whether Ireland fans really believed we were going to get out of that group, but I think we were buoyed by a sense of every single tournament that we'd ever been at, and indeed every single tournament since, we've had at least one shining memory of an outstanding result, an outstanding performance. And it felt like it stood to reason that we could do that again. The video package before the game was all about time to make some new memories, because some of the greatest Irish sporting memories ever, possibly the greatest Irish sporting memory ever, came from the Ireland soccer team at a major tournament. And we felt as though Croatia were there for the taking, because they hadn't qualified for the last World Cup. They got knocked out by Turkey in the last Euros, and in the World Cup previous to that, they'd gone out to Brazil and I think Australia as well, who hadn't qualified for a World Cup in years and years before that. So yeah, the whole mixture was just one of like massive confidence. And one of the things I actually remember, and it was kind of an idea of how kind of small time the Ireland team kind of was, with pretensions to the fact that we were kind of big, was that I found it to be a novelty that the players actually had their names on the back of their jerseys. I don't think they had that before. Because I remember I've probably watched the Henry handball 100 times. And the one thing I remember was you could see Henry 12 on the back of his shirt. And then Paul McShane, who was right next to him, he just had the number 13. It was like a GAA jersey. But
yeah,
that was like the biggest sense that we'd arrived in the big time. And man, I just, looking back on it now, I can feel the hope rising, because I brought all my friends over to that first game. I ordered like a shed load of pizzas, and we were all so hyped up. And then it kind of went down the toilet in the first 2.5 minutes. So thanks, Mario Mandzukic. But how about that goal, huh?
I know. I actually, from the time, I could not tell you anything about that game, but I did go back and watch it. And I mean, the one thing that did kind of annoy me was that, especially the first Croatia goal, I like, how does that go in? Do you know what I mean? How does that happen? Do you know? I think Ireland, it was like there's so much hype. I think there was a bit of, it was a bit too, they were a bit too sentimental, a bit too emotional going into this tournament, and less focused on the actual game ahead and the challenge ahead, that it caught up to them and they got caught out easily. But that first goal, I don't know how you can see that. But after that, they played quite well after the first goal, and obviously then they did get an equaliser, which ended up being their only goal of the tournament. But I think
I've a story about that. So
yeah,
when the free kick comes in, you heard throughout the game, you could hear a whistle coming from somewhere in the stands. And when the free kick was taken, as soon as it was taken, that whistle just blasted through the stadium.
Yeah, I was watching that. I heard it. I thought it was a ref's whistle a second time. I thought,
and it was for that exact reason why me and my friends didn't celebrate the goal, because we thought that some Ireland player had committed a foul and it was going to be chalked off and there'd be a free out. And so we just kind of stood there and I just didn't do anything. So the one good moment of Ireland's tournament, we didn't do anything about it.
That always happens. That always happens with us.
Is there, if that doesn't sum up Ireland at Euro 2012, I don't really know what does.
Yeah, and of course it was a set piece. That was our only goal. I mean, we love set pieces
back then.
Even still now, I mean, kind of fast forward to recently, Scotland game the other night, they were all over the corners. I mean, I don't know how many corners they had and how many times Shane Duffy got himself on the far post. And that, well, I mean, that's how they got the first goal. But and it's the same then. It's the same now. I think some of Ireland's best moments have come from a corner or a free kick, and someone nodded it on. And that's, I think, what happened with St. Ledger. But it was a good goal that they did get.
it was a great goal, and it was weird that when the first Croatia goal went in, it was when Ireland took over the game, and then when the Ireland goal went in, Croatia took over the game, and the they slowly kind of started to impose their will, and 2 minutes or so before half time, a corner gets half cleared, Modric sends it in, bing bang boom, comedy pinball. I think, I don't know if it was Stephen Ward or Glenn Whelan or someone that poked it into Jelavic, so an offside player was played onside, and he flicked it in. And this campaign was characterized by conceding goals at the worst possible time, and the worst is yet to come. But 3 minutes into the first half, 3 minutes before half time, those are the kind of sucker punches that are just so hard to recover from. And man, all our momentum felt gone at that stage. We got ourselves back into the game and just wiped out in a blink.
Then you're going into halftime level. You've kind of pulled back from an early upset to then going into halftime, conceding another goal. It definitely is a huge blow. And I think it's like, how do you come back from that?
Well, in this case, you don't.
Yeah,
and it was characterized by the third goal, which
I
said earlier that the Ireland goal, the fact that we missed it and didn't get to celebrate it, summed up Ireland's Euro 2012 campaign. I was wrong. This sums up Ireland's 2012 campaign.
Before they could even try fight back, they could see the third goal. And what was it,
like but the kind of the comedy of, I mean, every single goal was a comedy of errors in some way. But the fact that this header from it was a great header by Mandzukic, to be fair. But Mandzukic heads it, it hits the post, it hits Given in the back of the head, and then it goes. It's a Faulty Towers skit if ever I've seen it on the football field.
You have to feel for Shay Given, especially after the first goal. I think, see, the first goal is like, oh, maybe one of the Irish defenders was in his way. That's why he reacted so slowly to the Mandzukic header, because there's someone standing in front of him with that one. It's just like,
I believe George Hamilton said that ranks as a disaster. You know, well put, George. And that was it. That were really, I mean, on the hour mark, Ireland did have a really strong penalty shout. Robbie Keane had a Croatia player take his legs out from underneath them. If there were VAR, that would be given. But it didn't, and Ireland just kind of chased shadows the rest of the game, and disappointment was the word. It was the fact that we'd done so well for so long. 4 really good years since the absolute disaster that was Euro 2008 qualifying. And we got to the big stage and we just flopped. And we kind of knew that, well, if Croatia can pick us apart the way that they did, what are Italy and Spain going to do to us? And we'll get to that, but it was just so crushingly disappointing. I just, and it was hard for anyone really to come up with any kind of optimism, because we'd failed. We'd failed the exam that we'd kind of felt the last 2 or 4 years studying for.
The next 2 games were bound to be even harder than that. I mean, we're coming up against the world champions and coming up against Italy as well, who would then go on to get into the final against Spain in the Euros. You know what I mean? 2 of the best teams in the tournament. And we couldn't even beat Croatia. I think even if you get a draw against Croatia, kind of sets you up. But a win, like that game, it should have been a game that they would take. Like they did, I think they took that game a bit for granted. Like that was definitely.
I think the fans did. The fans might have taken it for granted because the players knew that they couldn't, because it was their best shot at getting results.
Yeah.
Just looking at some of this, some of the substitutions that Trapattoni made were a bit weird as well. I mean, he brought Simon Cox on, who's a striker, for McGeady, and put him on the wing, despite the fact that we had another couple of wingers on the bench. I think it was Stephen Hunt, James McLean. So now questions are being asked about the manager as well.
Yeah.
And the well, what this did to Trapattoni can be talked about more when we get to the end of the tournament and what came after. But I will say this: the one somewhat silver lining actually has nothing to do with football. It was after the game, after the coverage was over, RT did their après match sketch, and I think après match was never better than when it was than at Euro 2012. Yeah, the Euro 2012 was kind of après match at its peak because they were able to. I don't know how they managed to cobble together such a funny sketch directly after the game, because they were reacting to the game that had just finished an hour earlier, and they're actually able to pull up some footage from the game to use as part of a skit, and I couldn't believe that they did that. But Après Match had so many great skits. They had that one after the game. They had Eamon going to the BBC. They had the blackout. They had so many good ones, and consistent laughs in a tournament that offered nothing really in the
They
terms of
were like
positivity.
the perfect comic relief to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? When everyone's all in tears after getting battered by Croatia, Spain, and Italy, to then an hour later watch our match and somehow laugh at ourselves a bit.
But no, the air was gone after that. I mean,
Yeah,
the
definitely.
enthusiasm couldn't really be recaptured. And to be honest, I was thinking at the time, because Croatia was still creating chances at 3-1. I was thinking, would 4-1 be unfair on Ireland? And I couldn't definitively say no, but we would concede 4 a little later on. And we're at the Spain game now. And
Yeah.
it started the exact same way the Croatia game did.
4 minutes, Fernando Torres.
And it was another kind of comedy of errors, really. I mean, I think Ireland got the ball back, and Richard Dunn had it, and it was just ridiculously casual with about 3 Spain players in front of him, and Torres just snuck up behind him and said, "Thanks very much, I'll take that." And this was not peak Fernando Torres either. I mean, it was this past
No, this
season
is
that
when
he
he
had
was
that.
getting absolutely ridiculed.
Oh, yeah, he had
Just
that he had that massive miss against Man United when he went around the keeper and put it wide the season before. Now, he had scored that goal against Barcelona that took Chelsea to the Champions League
yeah.
final, but he was a shell of the Torres that he was at Liverpool.
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, a team like Ireland are not overturning a lead against a team like Spain.
No.
And again, in the second half, we conceded another goal 2 or 3 minutes into the half. Shea Given punched it out to David Silva, who just twisted, turned, rolled it in. And I saw a highlight package from I think it was ITV who were commentating on the game, and he just said it was simply too easy. And that kind of summed up the game, really. It was just Spain scored whenever they wanted to, really. But the big legacy from this game is, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it was the fields of Athenry. And yeah, Ireland fans just are terrific. I mean, Roy Keane didn't like it, but Roy Keane doesn't really like anything, and
Yeah.
that was
Especially at that
annoying.
point.
That, I mean, you can think about Roy Keane how you like, but it had been such a miserable tournament for us. We were already out after 2 games. We still had the Italy game to come, and we were trying to just
Have a moment.
feel something positive.
Yeah.
And
Sure, but what else can the fans do but kind of say, like, we're Irish fans we don't really like to mope. We like to kind of, like, especially like if now Irish fans during Euro qualifiers and stuff, when we have disappointments, we be kicking off, we go after the manager's head. But I think in a tournament like this, we're kind of more not forgiving, but we're kind of more like, we're here, so
I
we
feel like
still have to
we'd
enjoy
been
it. We're here
beaten
in the
down
tournament.
so much on the pitch that it would have been a bit unfair of us to just kind of pile it on from the
Yeah,
stands as
exactly.
well.
You still have to give fair dues to the players for being at that tournament and kind of getting Ireland to a tournament. I think they hadn't, last time they were in the Euros was 1988. So I think he kind of wanted to still enjoy it to some extent and kind of make a moment. And I mean, that's what it did.
And
Thousands of Irish
of course,
fans.
Ireland wanted to do better. I don't think they went
Oh
there
yeah,
to
definitely.
be absolutely humiliated by Croatia and Spain.
Yeah,
But there was nothing we could do about it in that moment. And it was just, it was something to cling to. And I don't know. Didn't John Delaney, I feel like he got himself in some sort of trouble. Like he was buying, I think he must have been getting locked at some stage in Poland, because this was his dream, because no, he could paper over the cracks of whatever else was going wrong
yeah,
in Irish football and say, hey, look, we got to a tournament, hooray, hooray. And I think I couldn't find a story on this, but I think I remember that he was caught for just getting absolutely hammered with the Irish fans, and that might, pass a bit of water. But in the cold light of day, that's not something an executive should be doing. Of course, that's kind
no.
of
Especially when
low.
we lose 4-0 to Spain, like you're the head of the FAI and you're doing that. So
Yeah, I think it's low down the list of his crimes against Irish football, but whatever.
one of many.
I'll be honest with you. I watched the Croatia game in preparation for this. I watched some of the Spain game.
Okay.
I didn't watch the Italy game. I was just so beaten down that I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
But a 2-0 win for Italy. Balotelli got a great goal,
Yeah.
which was kind of set him up to be.
One of the players of
It
the
was
tournament.
it kind of woke him up in time to become a meme in that semi final against Germany. And to top it all off, Keith Andrews, who was probably our best player against Croatia, got himself sent off. And I actually missed. I didn't watch the first half of this game because I was doing GA training, but it spoke a lot about how my excitement had gone from just crisis levels literally 8 days before to I'm fine if I miss the first half.
Yeah. It's like, well, we were out of the tournament anyway.
Yeah,
We're
and you just
gone.
didn't want to
There's
see us get battered anymore.
no, yeah, exactly. There's no point of and I think that's like the same thing with Ireland now a lot of the time. And it's kind of sad because sometimes, maybe not now. I think we have a bit more hope now and people kind of want to watch us now, but I think the past couple of years and with that Kenny team, when we were kind of like, oh, should Kenny really be here at all? Some games you're just like, I'm not arsed. I actually can't be arsed. Like, because we're going to play average teams that we should, even this Irish team should beat and still lose to them. I mean, it happened. We lost to Armenia, and that's one of them games where you go, okay, yeah, we're back to normal. I think it was the same here in 2012 with that Italy game. You just kind of shrug your shoulders and then that's done officially.
That was Damien Duff's last game for Ireland too.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, I
100th
don't
cap.
think
What a way for it to get your 100th
yeah,
cap.
100 cap. Yeah,
Fabio Cannavaro got his 100th cap winning the World Cup with Italy. This is how Damien
yeah,
Duff gets his.
yeah. I think these guys, like you say, they Duff for Irish legends, but in tournaments you can't really. I know with Duff you can pick out maybe that moment in Japan, but there's not many moments you can pick out. Like I think Robbie Keane, he was obviously a big name, but you think in that tournament he really should have been more of a marquee player. For this guy to be considered one of the greatest Irish strikers to not even get a goal in the tournament is very disappointing. Like this guy got how many Premier League goals? He did how well for LA Galaxy, and if like on paper this team should have done well better. I mean, now we struggle to get Prem players in the team, and here we had Robbie Keane, Kevin Doyle, and again Damien Duff. Like these are like good players. These aren't. So I mean, there's some countries that have random players that you've never heard of, or kind of more local players. But we had players that were playing in England that were playing in the Premier League, which is always kind of an aim for us, and still can't even get a win against Croatia, can't get a goal against Spain or Italy.
Can't even put up a fight, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like you should surely these guys should be put because like they're playing at a high standard week in, week out, and then when they come to Ireland, it's like they're immediately a laughing stock. But these are good players.
It was just a shrug of the shoulders, really, because it was it. It's the first and only time we've come back from a tournament with no good memories. You got
Yeah,
Stuttgart in '88. You've got any number of good memories from Italia '90, beating Italy in '94, the last minute equalizer against Germany in 2002. And then following this, you've got Robbie Brady's goal against Italy, which is probably the peak moment for this generation of Ireland fans.
yeah.
And this is kind of the
And
black sheep
this
of
one is the
Ireland's
low. This is the
history.
low point for for this kind of generation.
Well, actually, I think the low point might have come next because after this tournament, Trapattoni was coming under scrutiny because yes, he got a lot of brownie points for being such a massively esteemed coach before he came to Ireland. He nearly got us to a World Cup. He did get us to a Euros. Everything was, hunky dory. But then to get massively found out the way he did, it just raised all these questions that weren't there before. And then I think that hangover continued into the World Cup campaign because we had some terrible performances against Kazakhstan and the Faroe Islands. And then we lost 6-1 at home to Germany. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin. So, yeah, I think Euro 2012 kind of ended Trapattoni's career for the most part because it's certainly his career with Ireland because I don't really think there was any way he could come back from that because the thought would always be, well, like, yeah, what's the point in getting us to a tournament if we're just going to be smashed when we get there?
Hmm. Do you think that it was the manager? Like, do you think that if you had even switched and put Martin O'Neill as the manager in 2012, that there could have been something different? Because I think the thing with international football is it usually works out if you have a manager who actually cares about the team and is more kind of has an active role. Like you look at what Southgate has done with England now and compare him to all the other English managers. The reason why a lot of people say they're doing so well is because his connection with that team and his kind of connection with the players and the passion he has for that team. Do you think that maybe was what was missing considering Trapattoni? It seemed like there wasn't really a connection between him and Ireland there.
Some of the substitutions were weird. We mentioned the Cox one from McGeady.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying enough new things. I think
Yeah.
there was only one change from the Spain for the Spain game after the Croatia game. There was I think there was a bit of a disconnect there that it certainly wasn't there in 2016 with O'Neill and his players because a new crop had come along. Shane Long was starting now. Robbie Brady was there. Wes Hoolan was in the squad. Would O'Neill have done better? I don't know. In the cold light of day, I don't think we were ever really going to get out of that group because Spain and Italy, were who they were. And Croatia, they had the beginnings of that team that would eventually get to the World Cup final. Modric was there, Mandzukic, Perisic was in there. Jelavic had a good season for Everton. So I suppose Euro 2012 was a tournament where Ireland realistically weren't really going to get anywhere, but we could have left with our heads held high and we didn't even do that. But it's weird as well because Euro 2016 threw up a similar group. Italy were back. Belgium, they're their golden generation. And Sweden were there, and that with Ibrahimovic, anything can happen. And we did benefit massively from the fact that there were 24 teams in this tournament as opposed to 16, because if there were 24, we wouldn't even have got to the playoffs. But I don't know. It served as a reminder that Ireland, as they were, just weren't ready for that level
Yeah,
of competition. And looking at it in the present day, Stephen Kenny has a job on his hands getting us up to that level because I
yeah, we're
think
miles off that level now.
yeah, I think World Cups are, I was gonna say they're out the window, but they are expanding the World Cup for 2026. But I think it would be, I don't think it's unfair to say that if Ireland weren't uh if if Ireland weren't one of the teams that benefits from the expansion of these tournaments, then the chances of getting to one of those tournaments again was kind of slim to none, because a 16 team Euros, a 32 team World Cup, I think we've proven over the last 20 odd years that we're not good enough for that level, and it'll take a lot of work for us to get there.
Yeah, but I would say the one thing is there's a lot of countries out there that they don't have a strong kind of football foundation and they'll kind of never be there. Do you know what I mean? And they're fine with that. But I think it's kind of good that we always want to be better. That we're like, we do see down the line, like we're thinking, oh, at some point we have to maybe win, might be a bit, but get to a World Cup definitely, I think, is something that Ireland should be doing. I mean, we've got a lot of good football players from Ireland, and we have that, a lot of players that kind of come over from England through relatives. Like, there's always we always have players coming into the Irish system, so I like and that are good and that play at a good level. So I think at some point we really should be competing. And that's why it gives me a little bit of hope, and especially I think the Irish team now for the future, I think, is very hopeful. There are a lot of players in that team. I think they're all really young, and I think Kenny's kind of come in at a bit of an unlucky time. But I think he has handled it quite well, all things considering, and that's why I think they should keep him on, because no matter what manager you bring in, that team's still going to be a very young team and a very unexperienced team that they're not going to get to a Euros. That even if that team did get to a Euros, they'd get hammered because they don't know competition. They're way too young and unexperienced, and none of them have played at a high level. Like some of them players are playing in League One. Do you know what I mean? Like, there, and that's far off even year 2012 team. I mean, they were all kind of playing at a decent level. So I think that kind of gives us a bit of hope that I think at some point we'll eventually kind of get back there and kind of do well consistently.
Yeah, but I think Ireland might have to be prepared to wait for a while for that to happen.
Yeah, but we've waited a while already, so that's it.
And
Like,
who knows, if we ever do get it to a tournament again, it can't be much worse than Euro 2012.
no.
So that was our podcast on Ireland at Euro 2012, 10 years later. If we've depressed you through this, we're deeply sorry. But, we did. I didn't see anyone else commemorating 10 years on from this. And to be fair, why
Yeah,
would you? But it seems unfair because that generation of players took Ireland through a long old time and were great servants. And
yeah.
it seems unfair not to at least acknowledge their contributions. So maybe we gave them that sort of due. I don't know. But thanks for watching or listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Hopefully, we'll have more content like this in the future. If you're listening to us on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. That might help push us up the search algorithm. The algorithm is king. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, it's all at wearing number 10. So give us a follow there. We should be posting some stuff up on that in the near future. Niall, thanks so much for soldiering through this time with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
I've been Sean Breslin. thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.